Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm Senior Editor Denton Davidson here with Trevor Baker, editor on the Apple TV Plus limited series, The Last Thing He Told Me. Trevor, thanks for joining me today. I want to talk about the first episode, Protect Her, which basically begins at the end of the story. So talk about that decision and how it was made to start the series that way, and then how you sort of tiptoe around in that first episode without giving too much away to spoil the whole series.
The series is based on Laura Dave's novel, The Last Thing You Told Me, and the book actually starts out basically on day one when the Protect Her moment happens. But I believe, and I haven't talked to Josh about this personally, but Josh Singer is our brilliant showrunner. But I believe the meaning behind it was basically, in television, you want to kind of capture your audience right away and really sort of set up the fact that like this is going to be somewhat of a thriller. And so I believe the intention behind it was basically to find a sort of unique way to tell the story creatively and let the audience know that even though, we're going to have some exposition, we're going to have some backstory, that this is going to be kind of an exciting show overall.
Yeah. Like, how do you decide which episodes you're going to take on? And then how does that work collaboratively to keep everything sort of cohesive?
So traditionally, we would have what's called an editor rotation. And so basically, depending on, let's say you had 3 editors, essentially, every editor would get an episode and then it would sort of circle back and do that. Lately, on the shows that I've been on, we kind of go in with this sort of editor rotation, but as things get complicated and busy, we may switch that up a little bit. For example, I usually sign on because I'm also a creative producer on the show as well. And in order to do those sort of jobs, I try to make sure that I'm on for the pilot and the finale. So I'm able to sort of be there to support in any ways I can throughout the season too. But traditionally, it's more of just a math equation, just sort of like when falls into the other based on sort of the schedule.
And the series is a thrill ride. It does pull you off from the get-go, like you mentioned. And that's a great credit to that opening episode you edit. What's the key to building suspense and pace? What's the trickiest aspect of editing a mystery thriller?
So what's really tricky is that, if we're thinking in terms of a feature, you have 120 minutes to sort of build up tension and sort of build on for that thrill ride. With a show, traditionally, obviously we can leave on a cliffhanger, and with this new sort of like bingeable television, they may go one after another. But usually, if someone's watching this week to week, you have to do kind of like a reset, right? And so even if you leave at a very sort of high-paced moment, you have to sort of put yourself in sort of the shoes of the audience and go, okay, we're now resetting. How are we going to take that momentum that we built from the previous week and find ways to still sort of ramp it in, so it's not sort of a constant go, 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 go. And so, editing is all about tempo, and so finding ways to experiment or finding ways to sort of bring your audience in from a more experimental sort of, we luckily on the show, Josh was very open to us experimenting and sort of not going through sort of the traditional route. So we may start with a flashback and sort of use this in and then ramp us into the action, or just start right away. So.
And the moods shift from scene to scene. When Hannah and Owen are together, it's this love story. Everything is peaceful. They live on a floating house. I mean, everything's nice. And it's more slowed down and relaxed. Talk about how editing style impacts the mood of what viewers are seeing and what's transpiring on the screen.
So especially like in terms with Owen, it was the book is as far as the book goes, you're so much in, because it's a novel, you're in Hannah's head, and there's a lot of her speaking to, even though she's observing these events around her, and there's, she's finding out, and I don't want to spoil too much, but she's finding out that her husband has this backstory that she wasn't familiar with, and is a complete shock to her that things may be a little bit more complicated, a little bit more dangerous than what she had signed up for, or the relationship that she has with her stepdaughter, who's Owen's daughter, and finding out that she has to sort of take on this sort of responsibility to protect her. In the book, you basically are like, okay, cool. You're hearing Hannah's thoughts, you're hearing what she's processing, you're hearing her love for Owen. And so that was one of the biggest challenges of the show, is like, how do we find ways to incorporate this Hannah's POV in that sort of way, which is I believe one of the reasons why the flashbacks aren't heavily incorporated in the book, they may not even have really any flashbacks at all, but Josh came up with this device to basically show, okay, even though we're seeing this sort of this story unfold where Owen has, we may have doubts for Owen. Look at the man that Hannah fell in love with. Look at the man who she believes in, why she's sort of going on this journey. Because otherwise it would be, kind of unbelievable that she would have this sort of faith of just sort of like believing that her husband is okay and that her husband is a good man and that these things that she's finding out aren't necessarily the full story. And so it was tricky because we would have moments where you see, and Jennifer Garner is such a wonderful actress who's such a joy to edit, and you see her in these sort of emotional states where you're like, yeah, you know what, I don't like this guy. Like, wait a second, like she shouldn't be moving forward. And then we sort of find these sort of beautiful ways to sort of transition, whether it be through sound or picture, into a memory that she has, and be like, wait a second, no, I do love the most beautiful man in the world from Game of Thrones. Like, this is totally working. So, but it's a tricky balance for sure.
And it's a great soundtrack. How much does music impact your work? I was just listening to the soundtrack last night, and I love how that flows, and that's also kind of a more chill vibe.
Yeah.
And I pictured her like driving in a red truck. So how does the music impact your editing, and do you have any say in that, or are you just getting it from music supervisors? How does that all work together?
So, on some shows, needle drops is what sort of the songs that we call when we actually use it in a show. They're sort of written in the script, and sometimes it's more of an experimental process. And luckily, Josh Singer is a wonderful collaborator, and he sort of said from the get-go that he wants the show to have this sort of needle drop sort of fun vibe, but was also completely open to anything that we would bring to the table as well. And so we had full freedom to surprise him with, like, let's say there's a montage that you would normally think would have score. He would be totally open for us to surprise him and actually have a needle drop there. And even if he didn't necessarily resonate fully with the choice that we made, or maybe he liked it but he didn't feel like it was exactly right, it was always a matter of, okay, wait, this is inspiring another idea or another idea. And so we would sort of like mix and match and find different ways, test out different songs and see sort of what works. And then to that end too, we also have Donnie and Sandra are two composers that are absolutely brilliant. And in that sense too, the editors, we did a lot of temp score, but we also were in very frequent conversation with them. They would send us options, and sort of the same thing. Josh really wanted this to be to not just be a typical sort of suspense thriller. He always sort of wanted to inject some weirdness into it and some fun into it, which is where music really gave us the freedom to do that in a lot of ways.
And there's also this relationship between Hannah and her stepdaughter Bailey. So that's wonderful casting. Jennifer Garner and Gloria Rice, they play off each other so great. They're awesome to watch. And they really capture that sort of teenage angst and disdain teenagers have for parents, especially a step parent. Talk about that relationship and shooting those, or not shooting, but editing those two, and what the goal was in conveying that relationship as it grew from one episode to the next.
So, great question, by the way. Thank you. The goal was definitely to sort of find a sort of season-wide arc, whether it be through trust, because Hannah's character, and this is another thing that Josh was really, really adamant on. Owen and Hannah got married late in life. Owen had Bailey as a daughter for 15, 16 years before Hannah and her even met. And so a lot of the tension that sort of was inherent within the show wasn't necessarily even tension of danger. It was more like, okay, at any point, Bailey could go, "You're not my mom. Like, why are we doing this?" Or Hannah could go, "Why am I doing this? I've only, you're not my daughter." And so finding a way for there to be almost like an arc of trust and these sort of boundaries being tested is really the approach that we took, and examining sort of like, okay, if this is their relationship in episode 1, where are they going to be landing in episode 5, where it doesn't feel like just a repetition of family drama. Which was, so the nice thing is we had such a wonderful editorial team that we all were sort of in constant communication. We would look at scenes that we all sort of did, and really sort of find a way to build that arc of their relationship while keeping the suspense going at the same time.
How much does an actor impact your editing in terms of
You know,
like, I mean, is there a time you're like, oh my God, look at her face. Like we have to get that close up, like the facial expression, or how many cuts are you getting that you have to sort of decide, and how much creative control do you get over that?
so the beautiful thing, I mean, there's obviously in on any show we have challenges, but luckily on this show we were sort of blessed with this beautiful, like wonderful, brilliant acting, set of actors and set of characters. And so what I find is, as an editor, is a lot of times I might go into a scene with this idea. Like I take a lot of notes. We have the tone meeting. We have conversations. Obviously, so there's action lines within the writing and stuff like that. But what I love is as I'm building a scene, seeing the discoveries that the actor is having sort of in the moment and going, wait a second, like I may have thought this scene was layered this way, but it really is layered a completely different way. And that's something that Jennifer consistently gave us, whether it be looking at the first take she did and then looking at the last take she did, and almost seeing like the sort of discovery that she had sort of throughout the scene and making little decisions based on that. Because as much as, obviously we're editors, we like to be, if we were paid by the cut, that would be awesome, but the surprises that we have, which are really, really nice, are when we can actually just sort of sit on a take and really just not cut and not edit and let an actor sort of thrive. And luckily in this team, we had many opportunities to do that.
And everything builds to a head in that final episode, Sanctuary. And we're not going to give away the ending or spoil anything, but we learn the truth. And that finale sort of pieces together back with that first episode. There's sort of a nod to that. Was that the exact same footage, or how did you sort of weave back into that and make that flow so perfectly?
It wasn't the same footage, but luckily we had the same director, Libby Newman, and so
Okay.
she was intimately familiar with sort of what she had done before, and then was able to find this sort of way to make sure that it also sort of felt like it was within the same time frame. Because there are shows that I've been on in the past where we pick up, even if it's just an episode after, and you go, wait, this is a different show. The lighting's different, the performances are different. How are we going to sort of make this feel like it's interconnected? But really appreciate you recognizing that, because Livy did this great job making sure that the audience did sort of feel that way. There's another callback moment too that's a little bit subtler, that on in episode 4, Hannah and Bailey are flying to Austin, and Bailey's very visibly cold, and Hannah offers her sweater, and Bailey's like, oh, no, like, nerd, I don't want this sweater. By the finale, they're flying back home, and she's cold, and Hannah gives her this sweater. It's just very subtle, like she puts it on, and you realize, okay, like right there when we were talking about the art, they have sort of become a team now, and they have become sort of a family unit. So yeah, those details are very carefully constructed as far as where we're going to pay off through Josh Singer in the writing, but also the directors pay really, really close attention, even when it's as subtle as just putting on a sweater.
And the ending keeps us guessing. And I have spoken to Laura Dave, and she said that one of the things she held on to the longest in her book was the ending, and then she eventually let it go, and went with something else. So I was curious if there were multiple endings to this series. Did you cut anything? Is there an alternate ending somewhere that we didn't see?
There's probably 123 alternate endings because and really there's probably 123 different versions of really any big set piece that we worked on the show, which sounds painful. Like it sounds like that is not that would be a painful process, but actually when you're in an environment like with Laura Dave and or Josh Singer, it's kind of great, because you're able to sort of, even if we're happy with something, maybe open to the conversation of like, wait a second, let's try this. And what I found frequently is that Josh is very, very much open to notes, and he was very receptive to notes with Hello Sunshine or the network, or really anyone. But what would happen frequently, and this is like real kudos to Josh and Laura, because Laura very, very often was in the room with us as well, is that we may be starting on one note, and then we may discover like, wait a second, what if we tried this? And what if we tried this? And what if we tried this? And there was constant like, okay, Josh would go, I really like this. Can you send this to me? I'm going to go home. I'm going to sleep on it. Even though I know he probably wasn't sleeping, he probably was watching it over and over and over again. But so there were version after version of things that we did. And at a certain point, you just got to be like, okay, wait, we got to turn something in, you know? So luckily, I think that we landed with a very, very, probably the most beautiful ending we could have. And hopefully, if there were still DVDs, there would be a special features of the 120 other versions that we got too.
Well, when you had time to step away and finally breathe, and you look back, what did you take away from the project? What are you most proud of?
I'm so unbelievably happy. I think what is fun for me after any project is sort of getting the phone call from friends and family that I didn't necessarily even like let them know what I was working on, and going like, wait a second, like I'm 5 episodes in, I just realized your name's on this. I love this show, and this is one show that I've been getting that almost daily, which could have, good for Apple. I think it's doing pretty well right now, and just the amount of people that are enjoying it, because ultimately, as artists, especially editors, a lot of times we're in a dark room alone and we're going, I think I like this. Yeah, I love this. Okay, this is great. But is anyone else going to like this? And like, am I just crazy? Is this good? I think it's good. And then being able to get that affirmation afterwards that it's touched so many people and so many people have enjoyed it has been really, really rewarding. So,
Yeah. And I've gotten a lot of comments from people who read the book. And that's always scary. It's like, is it going to live up to the book? And everyone that I've heard from loved the series and thought, and one in particular was raving about how Jennifer Garner was just like the perfect casting. So incredible work to you and everyone all around. The Last Thing He Told Me is streaming on Apple TV Plus. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, you won't be disappointed. Best of luck to you and the entire cast and crew at the upcoming Emmy nominations. And thanks for speaking with Gold Derby today.
You too. Great meeting you, Denton. Really appreciate it.